Dorsey is a retired LAPD sergeant and is the author of the new book, The Confidence Chronicles, The Greatest Crime Story Never Told. And she joins me now from Los Angeles. Sergeant Dorsey, can you walk us through what you see in this video? And specifically, what does your training tell you about what happened here?
Well, we have to first acknowledge that the officers were responding to a Code 3 radio call, which is the highest priority call that we respond to. That means red lights and siren. And en route to this call, they're being told now that there are shots fired somewhere within this department store. Once we see the officers get on scene, we see them do a great job tactically of communicating, getting organized as they prepare to enter the location, and are communicating, planning what they're going to do if and when they encounter this suspect. Now, we now know that the suspect had in his hand a chain with a lock on the end of it. And I would imagine that as he was viciously beating this female victim with this chain and lock, it probably sounded to the witnesses like shots were being fired. And so that's what was in the mindset of these officers. They're going to encounter an armed individual. We also saw them try to find out as quickly as they could whether or not there were patrons within proximity to this suspect. And then as they entered the second level where he was alleged to be, we hear the officers communicate. LAPD, we're coming up. Make yourself identifiable if you can hear our voices. And at some point thereafter, they encounter the suspect. Now, we can see on the video that there's some distance between the suspect and now the victim who's on the floor, and there's a large rack of clothes, which won't really provide the officers with any concealment, which means if the suspect is armed with a handgun, as they believe, and if he were to take a shot at the officers, they could be struck because the only thing between the officers and the suspect is really distance and clothing. And so when the suspect sees the officers, we see him duck out of the out of the eyesight of the officers. And I'm assuming that they believed he's armed and he could fire the weapon at us. And so the officer who had the ability to take a shot did so.
I'm interested that you say that this was likely, given your experience, what police officers would be doing. Was there an alternative posture here? Could they have tried to approach him without using deadly force, or would that be unreasonable given everything you just went through?
Given what I'm assuming was in their mind, what was their perception, they're going to encounter someone who's armed with a handgun. That was the information that they were working off of. Suspect has a gun, shots have been fired. And so when they encounter this suspect and he ducks out of view, it's not inconceivable or unreasonable for the officers to think this suspect may very well start shooting at us. And so when they had an opportunity to take a shot, the first officer did so and fatally wounded the suspect. I don't see how the officers could have done anything different in this instance, given the information that had been provided to them. We now know, hindsight being 2020, as we Monday night quarterback this situation, that the suspect was unarmed. But listen, the officers were reacting and responding to the suspect. He had every opportunity, should he have decided to do so, to surrender, to throw his hands up in the air and show to the officers that he wasn't armed, to drop down onto his knees and show that he was not a threat to the officer, and he did none of that.
We've had so many controversies with policing in recent months and in recent years. Do you think that there is something that has to fundamentally change about tactics and training here? Or do you think this is just the reality of the violence that police and unfortunately everyday people confront every day in their lives right now in the United States?
Well, certainly what we saw in this video is inherent to police work, and there are people out there who don't comply. There are people out there who want to do harm to police officers. And just as we have seen officers take a life unnecessarily, we have seen citizens take the life of police officers who have ambushed police officers. Just very recently, a young Black female officer was ambushed, shot in the head, and was recently taken off life support. And so no officer wants to use deadly force, is what I would like to believe. But there are instances when this is what we take an oath to do in the immediate defense of life. And in this instance, the officers were defending the life of this young woman who was being savagely beaten by this suspect with this chain, which had a lock on the end of it. And but for her being able to withstand that beating, she too could have lost her life.
Oh, the video is just so incredibly disturbing, and I know there will be many more investigations to come on exactly what transpired. Sergeant Dorsey, really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.